Tonight, before you close your eyes, I want you to say 5 words. Just 5. Not a long prayer, not a carefully constructed petition, not an exhaustive review of everything that went wrong today and everything you are afraid might go wrong tomorrow. 5 words spoken with full intention from the deepest place of trust you can access tonight into the spiritual atmosphere of the room where you sleep. 5 words that I have spoken at the edge of sleep for more years than I can count. 5 words that I watched change situations overnight in ways that the daylight hours of effort and worry and calculation had not been able to change in weeks or months or sometimes years. I am going to give you those 5 words. But before I do, I need to show you something about the night. Something about what actually happens in the hours between when you close your eyes and when you open them again. Because most people do not understand what the night is. They think it is empty time, downtime, the gap between days during which nothing of consequence occurs. They carry the day's unresolved weight into the night, the debt that did not improve, the relationship that did not heal, the diagnosis that did not change, the prayer that did not seem to land anywhere, and they lie down on top of all of it and wait for morning, as though morning were simply the other side of a neutral and inactive darkness. The night is not neutral. The night is not inactive. The night is not the gap between the days when God waits. The night is when God works in ways that the active, calculating, anxious, sense-knowledge-dominated human mind cannot interfere with. The night is when the hands that have been gripping all day finally open. The night is when the providence that has been trying to move through a situation all day against the friction of your fear and your control and your relentless mental effort to manage the outcome finally has room to move. Listen to what the scripture says about the night. Genesis opens with God working in the darkness. Before the first day was spoken into being, before the first light broke over the face of the deep, God was present and active in the formless dark. Darkness is not the absence of God. Darkness is where God begins. Psalm 127:2 says, He grants sleep to those He loves, not rest, not unconsciousness. He grants sleep. Sleep is a gift. It is an active provision, the specific, deliberate gift of a God who is saying, you can stop now, I have this. The hours you are about to enter are mine, and I work in them in ways your waking mind cannot access and cannot produce. Jacob understood this. In Genesis 32, Jacob wrestled through the entire night with a figure who would not release him until the dawn. The breakthrough Jacob had been seeking through 20 years of human effort and negotiation and strategy, the reconciliation with his brother, the resolution of the crisis that threatened everything, did not come through any of that effort. It came through a night of wrestling, through the hours of darkness before the dawn, and he emerged from that night with a new name and a changed life and a limp that would remind him for the rest of his days. The transformation happened in the dark. Peter was sleeping in prison when the angel came. Acts chapter 12. The church was gathered in urgent prayer for his release, and Peter was asleep, so thoroughly asleep that the angel had to strike him on the side to wake him, while the chains were being broken. While the iron gate was swinging open of its own accord, Peter was asleep. The miracle was not interrupted by his wakefulness. It was accomplished through his rest, through the specific trusting quality of a sleep that was so complete, so surrendered, so free of the anxious human effort to manage the situation, that the angel could move without being crowded out by the noise of human trying. This is the pattern. This is the consistent testimony of the scripture about what happens in the night. God works in the dark. Angels move in the hours of sleep. The things that cannot be forced through in the day, through the relentless application of human effort and human worry, break through in the night when the hands are finally open and the mind is finally still, and the only thing operating in the room is the trust that was spoken before the eyes closed. And this is why the 5 words matter so much, because the trust must be spoken before the eyes close. The declaration must be made at the threshold of the night before you cross over into it. Because what you carry into the night, the posture of your spirit in the last conscious moment of the day, determines what God has room to do in the hours that follow. If you carry anxiety into the night, the anxiety is the atmosphere of the room. If you carry the weight of unresolved things, the weight is the atmosphere. But if you speak the 5 words, if you cross the threshold of sleep with a genuine act of surrender as your last conscious act, the atmosphere of the room changes, the space opens, and into that open space, God moves. Let me give you the 5 words now. They come from one of the most profound verses in the entire Bible, a verse spoken by Jesus himself in the most difficult moment of his life, a verse from Psalm 31:5 that Jesus quoted from the cross, his last words before he surrendered his spirit to the Father. The verse is this: "Into your hands I commend my spirit." 5 words: into your hands I commend. Jesus spoke these words at the moment of ultimate surrender, at the moment when every human effort had reached its absolute end, at the moment when there was nothing left to try, nothing left to manage, nothing left to calculate, only the final, complete, irreversible act of placing everything into the hands of the Father and releasing the outcome entirely. Into your hands I commend my spirit. These are the words I want you to speak tonight, not as a formula, not as a ritual that replaces genuine faith with mechanical repetition, as the truest and most complete act of surrender that a human being can perform, as the specific, deliberate declaration that crosses you over from the day's effort into the night's trust, as the 5 words that tell God and tell the spiritual atmosphere of your room, and tell every force that has been working against your situation, I am done trying to hold this. It belongs to you. It has always belonged to you, and I am letting go. Now, I want to take you through each of these 5 words individually, because I believe each one carries a specific weight and a specific spiritual effect, and I want you to feel all 5 of them when you speak them tonight. The first word is into. Into is a directional word. It describes movement, specific, intentional, one-way movement from where something is to where something is going. When you say into your hands, you are not saying near your hands. You are not saying in the general vicinity of your hands. You are describing the complete transfer of something from your possession into God's. Into implies full arrival. Nothing held back at the threshold. No foot still in the doorway of your own control. Everything in motion, everything in transit, everything committed to the destination. This word is the first act of genuine surrender. The moment your mouth forms the word into, you are already in motion. You have already begun the transfer that the night requires. And the spiritual atmosphere of the room responds to that motion. Fear, which feeds on your grip, on your refusal to release, on the white-knuckled quality of a held breath, finds nothing to hold on to in the word into. You are already moving. You are already releasing. You are already in transit toward the hands that receive what you are sending. The second word is your. Your is the word of specific address. You are not releasing your situation into the abstract. You are not surrendering to fate or fortune or the general workings of an impersonal universe. You are addressing a specific person, a specific Father, the God who made you and knows your name and knows the specific contents of the situation you are releasing tonight. The God whose hands are not generic holding places for everything that falls, whose hands are personal, attentive, already acquainted with every detail of what you are about to place in them. Your changes everything about the quality of the surrender. Because when you know whose hands receive what you release, the release becomes possible in a way it cannot be when the receiving party is unknown. You are not dropping your most precious concerns into darkness. You are placing them with intention and with trust into the hands of the only person who has both the power to handle them and the love to handle them well. Your hands, not any hands. The specific, faithful, nail-scarred hands of a God who proved he could be trusted with the worst before you were ever called to trust him with anything. The third word is hands. Hands are the instruments of work, of action, of intervention. When God acts in Scripture, he acts through his hands. I have redeemed you, he says in Isaiah 43. I have called you by name. I have taken you by the hand. The hand of God is not a metaphor for vague divine influence. It is the specific, active, operative power of God entering a situation and doing what that situation requires. When you release your situation into God's hands tonight, you are not releasing it into passivity. You are releasing it into activity, into the specific, targeted, fully resourced action of the God who created the universe and who is equally capable of creating what your situation needs in the hours while you sleep. Hands also means held. What is in God's hands is not lost. It is not forgotten. It is not set aside while more pressing matters are attended to. It is held personally, continuously, with the specific attention of a God for whom nothing is too small and no one is too insignificant and no situation is too complicated. When you say hands tonight, let the word do the full work of what it means, not simply released, held by hands that do not tire, do not forget, do not drop what has been entrusted to them. The fourth word is I. I is the word of personal ownership of the act. This surrender is not generic. It is not the surrender of some religious category of person. It is yours, specific to you, made by you tonight, with the full weight of your specific life and your specific situation and your specific exhaustion behind it. The I in these 5 words is important because it means you cannot be a bystander to your own surrender. You cannot say the words from the outside of them. You have to be inside them. Your voice, your intention, your specific decision made tonight to release what you have been holding and to trust the hands that receive it. And the 5th word is commend. This is the deepest word of the 5. To commend is not simply to hand over. To commend is to entrust, to place something into another's care with the full and deliberate confidence that the person receiving it is both capable and trustworthy to handle it well. The word commend carries the weight of a die, considered judgment. I have assessed the situation. I have assessed the one to whose care I am releasing it. And I have concluded, after everything I have been through, after every time I have seen what happens when I grip, and every time I have seen what happens when I release, that this specific God, in whose hands I am placing this specific situation tonight, is trustworthy, is capable, is already working, is already ahead of me in this. And I commend, I place, I trust completely, without deadline, without condition, without reserving a portion of the worry for myself in case God needs help. Into your hands I commend my spirit. Or in the language of your daily life tonight, into your hands I commend this situation, this marriage, this child, this body, this debt, this diagnosis, this relationship that has not healed, this prayer that has not yet visibly moved. Into your hands I commend it all. 5 words, complete, done. Now let me tell you what I have watched happen in the night that follows this kind of surrender. Not always, not mechanically, but with a consistency that I cannot attribute to coincidence and do not wish to. I have watched situations shift overnight that had not moved in months, not always in the dramatic, visible, undeniable way that we most associate with miracles, though sometimes in exactly that way, more often in the quieter, more interior way that is actually more durable. The person waking in the morning with the fear gone, not the situation resolved, the fear gone. The weight that had been sitting on the chest lifted, the sense that something has changed in the spiritual dimension of the situation, even before the natural dimension has caught up. The peace that passes all understanding, settling in the night while the conscious mind was absent. making itself at home in the room that the surrender had opened. I want to tell you about something that I witnessed more times than I can count at the monastery, and that speaks directly to what happens when the night is entered with genuine surrender. Brothers who came to morning prayer with their faces changed, who had gone to sleep under a weight that everyone around them could feel, and who woke with a clarity and a quietness that had not been there the night before, who could not always explain what had changed, who said only that something had lifted, that they had woken up and the thing they had been carrying was still there in the natural sense. The situation was unchanged, but they were different in relation to it. The grip was gone. The fear had lost its authority. The morning had brought something that the evening had not had. This is what genuine surrender does in the night. It changes you in relation to the situation before it changes the situation. And the change in you, the interior change, the release of the grip, the dissolution of the fear, is what creates the space in which the situation can then change. Because the situation was never held in place only by external forces. It was held in place, at least in part, by the specific quality of your relationship to it, by your grip, by your anxiety, by the atmosphere of fear and control that surrounded it and made it spiritually like a closed fist that nothing could enter or exit. When the surrender breaks that grip, when the 5 words spoken at the threshold of sleep open the hand, something is freed in the situation itself. The providence that has been trying to move through it finds room to move, and by morning things are different. Not always the things you were watching. This is important. The miracle that happens overnight is not always the miracle you specified. It is not always the healing of the particular thing you named or the resolution of the particular problem you surrendered. The God who works in the night works with a vision of your life that is larger than your current view of it. And sometimes what he does in the night is not the resolution you asked for, but the preparation you needed. The interior change that makes the next step possible, the peace that makes the next morning navigable, the clarity that arrives with the dawn and shows you something you had not been able to see through the fog of the fear. Trust the night. This is what I want to say most simply and most directly. Trust the night. Trust what God does in the hours when you are not watching. Trust that the hands you are placing your situation into tonight are already active, already moving, already ahead of the situation in ways your waking mind cannot track or predict or produce. Trust that the angel that was dispatched from the first day you prayed is still moving. Trust that the darkness is not the absence of God, but the specific context in which God has chosen to begin the most important things. Trust the morning that has not yet arrived, because it is coming, and it is coming from the hands of a God who has been working all night on the thing you commended to him before you slept. Say the 5 words tonight. Say them before you close your eyes. Say them in the room where your situation lives. Say them in the kitchen where the weight of the finances presses down. Say them at the door of the child you are afraid for. Say them in the quiet of the room where you sleep, as your last conscious act before you cross over into the night that God is about to fill. Into your hands I commend. Into your hands this marriage, this body, this debt, this child, this fear, this situation that has not changed. Into your hands the night that is about to begin and everything it will contain. Into your hands my trust, my future, my tomorrow that I cannot yet see. Into your hands I commend. And then sleep. Not the anxious half-sleep of a person who is still trying to manage the outcome from inside the dream. The sleep of Peter in the prison cell while the angel breaks his chains. The sleep of a person who has done the one thing required of them, the one thing that opens the night to the action of God, and has genuinely, completely, with 5 specific and deliberate words, released what they were holding into the hands that can actually carry it. The miracle you are believing for may not come in the way you expect. It may come in the morning as a changed heart rather than a changed circumstance. It may come as a door that opens where yesterday there was a wall. It may come as the specific provision for the specific need that arrives from a direction you are not watching, but it will come because The hands you are placing everything into tonight are the hands that have never failed what was commended to them. And the God whose hands those are has been working in the darkness since before the first light of creation and has not stopped working in the dark since. Into your hands I commend. Say it tonight. Say it with everything you have. And sleep in the trust that the night belongs to God and that God is very, very good at what He does in it. Thank you for being here with me tonight. If you are watching this before sleep, let these words carry you over the threshold. Let them be the last thing your conscious mind holds before it releases into the rest that God grants to those He loves. If someone you know is lying awake tonight under a weight they cannot put down, share this with them. The 5 words are for them too. Subscribe to this channel if you want to continue this walk together. God bless you, God keep you, and God fill your night with what your day could not produce. Into your hands I commend.